The words hit me like a slap across the face. I had just opened my mouth to ask a simple question about Dad's furniture when Evan's voice cut through the room. "You're not family enough to have a say." The conference room fell silent. 20 pairs of eyes turned to watch my humiliation. My Aunt Claire gasped. Uncle Thomas shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Even Evan's wife, Patricia, looked down at her hands. I felt my face burn. My throat tightened. For 28 years, I had been the daughter who never measured up. The one who lived 2 states away. The one Evan claimed abandoned the family when I moved for college and never came back. I tried to keep my expression neutral, but inside something was crumbling. This was Dad's funeral week. I had flown in from Oregon, taken time off work, and now my own brother was telling me I didn't belong. Mr. Harrison, Dad's lawyer, cleared his throat loudly. The sound echoed in the tense silence. "Actually," he said, adjusting his glasses, "there's a line here your father insisted be read aloud." Evan's smirk began to fade. Mr. Harrison's finger traced down the page of Dad's will. The room leaned forward collectively. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. "Your father wrote this specifically," Mr. Harrison continued, his voice careful and measured. "He stated that Nora plays a role in this family that some of you may not be aware of." Evan stiffened in his chair, his jaw clenched visibly. Patricia touched his arm, but he shook her off. "What role?" Evan demanded. "She barely visited. I was here every day. I ran the business with him. I took care of everything." Mr. Harrison didn't respond to Evan's outburst. Instead, he continued reading, his eyes scanning the document with professional detachment. My mind raced. What role? Dad and I had been close when I was younger, but distance had made our relationship mostly phone calls and holiday visits. What could he have meant? Uncle Thomas shifted forward. "What does it say, Harrison?" The lawyer looked up, directly at me. Something in his expression made my stomach flip. "Before I read this next part," he said slowly, "Nora, your father left something specifically addressed to you alone. It must be delivered before we continue." Mr. Harrison reached into his briefcase and pulled out a cream-colored envelope. My name was written across the front in Dad's distinctive handwriting. The sight of it made my eyes sting with tears. "This is ridiculous," Evan exploded, standing up so fast his chair scraped against the floor. "She manipulated him. In his final months, she must have gotten in his head somehow." "Evan, sit down," Aunt Claire said sharply. "Let the lawyer do his job." "My job is to execute your father's wishes exactly as written," Mr. Harrison said firmly. "And he was very specific about this." He handed me the envelope. My hands trembled as I took it. The paper felt heavy, expensive. I turned it over and saw the seal was still intact. Everyone watched as I carefully opened it. Inside was a single brass key attached to a small card. I pulled it out, my fingers shaking. The card had only one sentence written in Dad's handwriting. "This changes everything." I looked up at Mr. Harrison, confused. "What does this open?" "That information is also in the will," he replied. "But your father wanted you to have the key first." Evan's face had gone pale. "I demand you skip whatever nonsense is in there about her," Evan said, pointing at me like I was a stranger. "I was the one who showed up. I was the one who sat with Dad through his treatments. I managed the business when he couldn't." The words stung because parts of them were true. I hadn't been there for the worst of it. Work commitments, the distance, my own life in Oregon. I had flown in when I could, but Evan had been there daily. Guilt washed over me, the same guilt that had haunted me since Dad's diagnosis 2 years ago. "Evan," I started, my voice barely a whisper. "No," he cut me off. "You don't get to talk. You barely showed up, Nora. You called once a week if we were lucky. I did everything." Memories flashed through my mind. Evan scheduling family meetings when he knew I couldn't attend. Evan telling me Dad was fine when I called, that I didn't need to worry. Evan always positioning himself as the dedicated son while painting me as the absent daughter. "Mr. Harrison," Uncle Thomas interrupted, "perhaps we should continue with the will." The lawyer nodded. He turned to the next page, and I saw his eyebrows rise slightly. "The next section," he said carefully, "concerns Evan specifically. There are conditions attached to his inheritance." Evan's confident posture faltered. "What kind of conditions?" Patricia asked, her voice tight with worry. Mr. Harrison adjusted his reading glasses. "Your father wrote, 'I leave my estate to my children with the following provisions. Evan must submit to a complete financial audit of the family business before receiving any portion of his inheritance.'" The room erupted. Evan jumped to his feet again. "An audit? That's insane. I've been running that business honestly for 2 years." But I noticed something. Real fear flashed across Evan's face, quick as lightning but unmistakable. His hands clenched into fists. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool air conditioning. "This is her doing," Evan said, pointing at me again. "She poisoned his mind against me." "I barely spoke to Dad these past few months," I said quietly. "You know that." "Exactly. And in that time, who knows what you said to him on those phone calls?" Mr. Harrison raised his hand for silence. "There's more. Your father wrote that this audit was prompted by—" He paused, reading ahead. "Unusual activity he discovered shortly before his death." "What unusual activity?" Aunt Claire asked, her voice sharp with concern. Mr. Harrison flipped to an attached document. "Large withdrawals from business accounts during the period of your father's illness. Withdrawals that only Evan had access to approve." The room went deadly silent. Everyone turned to look at Evan. Those were legitimate business expenses," Evan stammered. "Dad knew about all of them." "Did he?" Mr. Harrison asked, his tone neutral but pointed. Evan's face flushed red. "Of course he did. I would never. I can't believe you're all looking at me like this, like I'm some kind of criminal." Patricia stood up, moving closer to her husband. "Evan has been working 60-hour weeks. He's dedicated his entire life to that business." "No one is accusing anyone yet," Mr. Harrison said. "This is simply what your father requested. The audit will clear everything up if the withdrawals were legitimate." But Evan's reaction told a different story. He looked trapped, desperate. His eyes darted around the room, landing everywhere except on me. I felt something shift inside me. A memory surfaced, something I had pushed away. Dad's voice on the phone 3 weeks before he died. The memory came flooding back with crystal clarity. I had called Dad on a Wednesday evening. He had sounded weak, his breathing labored. The cancer was winning, and we both knew it. "Nora," he had whispered, his voice barely audible. "I need to tell you something important." "What is it, Dad? Should I come down?" "No time," he had said. "Listen carefully. Don't let him bury the truth. The key will lead you there." "What key? Dad, you're not making sense." But he had started coughing, and a nurse had taken the phone, telling me he needed to rest. I had called back the next day, but Evan answered Dad's phone and told me Dad was sleeping, that I shouldn't bother him so much. I had thought Dad was confused from medication. Now, sitting in this conference room with a brass key in my hand, I understood. Dad hadn't been confused at all. "Nora," Mr. Harrison's voice brought me back to the present. "Are you all right?" I looked up at Evan. He was staring at me, and for the first time I saw real panic in his eyes. "The key," I said softly. "Dad told me about it 3 weeks before he died." Evan went pale. "You caused this," Evan shouted, lunging toward me. Uncle Thomas caught his arm. "You put these ideas in his head. You turned him against me." "Evan, control yourself," Mr. Harrison said firmly, "or I'll have to ask you to leave." "Leave? This is my inheritance we're talking about, my business." "Actually," Mr. Harrison said, reaching for another document, "your father anticipated this reaction. He made an audio recording to clarify his intentions." My heart pounded. An audio recording. When? Mr. Harrison pulled out a small digital recorder from his briefcase. "Your father recorded this 1 week before his death. He was very specific that it be played if anyone questioned his decisions." He pressed play. Dad's voice filled the room, weak but unmistakably his. "If you're hearing this, it means someone is fighting my will. Probably Evan. Evan's face crumbled. Dad continued, I'm making this recording because I fear Evan is concealing more than money. I found evidence of things I never wanted to believe about my own son, but the proof is undeniable. The room gasped collectively. Aunt Claire pressed her hand to her mouth. Patricia's eyes filled with tears. Dad's voice cracked with emotion. Nora, if you're listening, follow the key. The recording ended. I couldn't stay in that room any longer. The weight of everyone's stares, Evan's fury, the revelation in Dad's voice. I grabbed the key and my purse and walked out, ignoring Evan's shouted protests behind me. Mr. Harrison followed me into the hallway. Nora, wait. I turned, tears streaming down my face. What does this key open? He pulled out a piece of paper with an address. A storage unit. Your father rented it 6 months ago. Only you are listed as authorized to access it. My hands shook as I took the paper. The storage facility was 20 minutes away. What's in there? Mr. Harrison's expression was grave. I don't know. Your father never told me. He only said it contained the truth. I drove to the storage facility in a daze. The key felt heavy in my pocket. Part of me was terrified of what I would find. Part of me needed to know. The facility was old, rows of orange metal doors stretching in every direction. I found Unit 247 near the back. The key slid into the lock smoothly. The door rolled up with a metallic screech. Inside was a single cardboard box labeled in Dad's handwriting. Truth. I knelt down and opened it. The first document inside made me gasp. It was a photocopy of a check. Dad's signature was at the bottom, but something about it looked wrong. I pulled out my phone and found a photo from last Christmas where Dad had signed a card. I compared the signatures. They weren't the same. I dug deeper into the box. More photocopies of checks, all with slightly off signatures. Transfer authorizations. Business loan documents. Each one supposedly signed by Dad, each one clearly forged. My hands trembled as I found a folder labeled Evan's Plan. Inside were printed emails. I recognized Evan's email address at the top. The emails were between Evan and someone named Marcus Webb. They discussed managing the old man and taking full control once he's no longer able to interfere. One email made my blood run cold. Dad's diagnosis is actually a blessing. Once he's too sick to ask questions, we can restructure everything. Nora's too far away to notice, and by the time the dust settles, I'll have complete control. I sat back on my heels, feeling sick. My brother had been planning this, planning to steal from our dying father. But there was more in the box. Another key, smaller than the first, with a bank name stamped on it. The next morning, I went to First National Bank downtown. The small key in my hand felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I need to access a safe deposit box, I told the bank manager, showing her the key and my ID. She checked her records. Box 2847. Yes, it's registered under your name and your father's. I'm sorry for your loss. She led me to a private room and brought the box. After she left, I sat alone, staring at it. What else had Dad hidden? I opened the box with shaking hands. Inside was a USB drive in a clear plastic case. A note was taped to it in Dad's handwriting. Watch this alone first. I pulled out my laptop and plugged in the drive. A video file appeared, dated 3 months ago. I clicked play. Dad appeared on screen, sitting in what looked like his home office. He looked so thin, so tired, but his eyes were clear and determined. Nora, he began, his voice stronger than I expected. If you're watching this, then I'm gone, and you found what I left for you. I'm sorry I had to do it this way. I'm sorry for many things. Tears streamed down my face. Dad continued. 3 months ago, I discovered Evan had been systematically stealing from the company. At first, I thought it was a mistake, poor bookkeeping. But the more I investigated, the more I found. He held up papers to the camera. Forged signatures, unauthorized transfers. He'd been draining accounts for over a year, using my illness as cover. He thought I was too sick to notice. Dad's voice hardened. But worse than the money, Nora, was his plan for you. I found emails discussing how to keep you away, how to turn the family against you. He wanted you isolated so no one would question his control. My chest felt tight. All those times Evan told me not to bother coming home. All those family meetings scheduled when I couldn't attend. It had been deliberate. The lawyer who originally drafted my will retired last year, Dad said. Evan convinced me to use his friend Marcus. I didn't realize until recently that Marcus was helping Evan draft a new will, one that would leave you with almost nothing. He paused, coughing. When he recovered, his expression was fierce. So I did something I never thought I'd have to do. I hired a new lawyer without telling anyone. I documented everything, and I made sure you would inherit what you deserve. Dad leaned closer to the camera. Nora, you are the rightful person to lead this company. You have your mother's integrity, her kindness. Evan has neither. The video continued. The business should be yours. The house should be yours. I'm leaving you controlling interest in everything because I trust you to do what's right. The screen went black. I sat in the bank's private room, sobbing into my hands. All these years I had believed Evan's narrative, that I was the bad daughter, the one who left, the one who didn't care enough. But Dad had known the truth. I thought about all the times I had apologized to Evan for not being there more, all the guilt I carried. And all along, Evan had been actively pushing me away while stealing from our father. The anger came then, hot and fierce. How dare he? How dare he make me feel like I wasn't enough while he systematically betrayed everyone? I packed up the USB drive and the documents from the storage unit. Mr. Harrison needed to see all of this. But first, I sat in my car and let myself break down completely. I cried for Dad, for the pain he must have felt discovering his son's betrayal. I cried for the years of manipulation. I cried for the relationship with Evan that could never be repaired. Then I wiped my tears, started the car, and headed back to the lawyer's office. It was time to finish this. When I walked back into the conference room, Evan was in the middle of a heated argument with Uncle Thomas. She's trying to ruin me, Evan was saying. Everything I've built, everything I've worked for. He stopped when he saw me. I walked calmly to the table and placed the folder of documents down in front of Mr. Harrison. These are photocopies, I said quietly. The originals are in a safe place. Evan's eyes went wide. He lunged for the folder, but Mr. Harrison was faster. He placed his hand firmly over the documents. That's enough, Evan. You don't understand, Evan said desperately. She's fabricated all of this. She's had months to create fake documents. These aren't fake, I interrupted. They're photocopies of checks you forged, emails you sent, transfer authorizations you created using Dad's stolen signature. Patricia stood up, her face pale. Evan, what is she talking about? Nothing, she's lying. Mr. Harrison opened the folder and began examining the documents. His expression grew darker with each page. These appear to be authentic, he said finally. Of course they're not, Evan shouted. Mr. Harrison looked up at him. Then explain the criminal complaint your father filed before his death. The room went silent. Criminal complaint, Patricia whispered. Mr. Harrison pulled out another document from his briefcase. Your father filed this with the district attorney's office 2 weeks before he died. It details Evan's financial misconduct and intent to defraud the estate. Evan's face went from red to white in seconds. He wouldn't. He did, Mr. Harrison said firmly. The DA's office was waiting for him to pass before investigating. They didn't want to cause him additional stress in his final days. Aunt Claire stood up. Evan, tell me this isn't true. It's all a misunderstanding, Evan said, but his voice had lost its strength. I was managing the business. Sometimes I had to make quick decisions. 6-figure transfers to your personal account, Mr. Harrison read from the complaint. Purchase of a vacation home in your name only, a boat, investment properties. Patricia gasped. What vacation home? What boat? Evan's mother-in-law, Helen, who had been silent until now, spoke up. Her voice was ice cold. You told us Nora wasn't even mentioned in the will. You said she had walked away from the family completely. That's what I thought. You lied, Helen interrupted, to all of us about everything. The room erupted in overlapping voices, Evan trying to explain, Patricia demanding answers, Aunt Claire looking horrified, Uncle Thomas shaking his head in disgust. I sat quietly, watching it all unfold. Part of me felt vindicated. Part of me just felt sad. This was my brother. We had played together as kids. He had taught me to ride a bike. How had he become this person? Helen stood up and walked over to me. She took my hands in hers. I'm so sorry, she said, tears in her eyes. He told us you had abandoned the family, that you only cared about your own life in Oregon. We believed him. It's not your fault, I said softly. When did you get so good at lying? Patricia asked Evan, her voice breaking. The business trips you said were for work, were those real? Or were you at your secret vacation home? Evan slumped in his chair, silent now. The fight had gone out of him. Mr. Harrison cleared his throat. Perhaps we should continue with the will, unless anyone objects. No one objected. Even Evan just stared at the table. The next section concerns the distribution of assets, Mr. Harrison said, turning the page. My heart pounded. This was it. For the first time since entering this room, I stood up. My legs felt shaky, but I forced myself to remain steady. Before you read that, I said, surprised by how strong my voice sounded, I want to say something. Everyone looked at me. For years, I believed I wasn't good enough, that I had failed Dad by moving away, by building my own life. Evan made sure I believed that. Evan wouldn't meet my eyes. But I'm done being silent. I'm done accepting a narrative where I'm the villain of our family's story. Dad knew the truth. He saw through Evan's manipulation, and he trusted me enough to leave me proof. I looked directly at Evan. You tried to erase me from this family. You almost succeeded, but Dad made sure I'd have a voice, even after he was gone. The room was completely silent. I sat back down. Mr. Harrison, please continue. He nodded with what looked like approval. Your father's will states the following. I leave 51% controlling interest in Caldwell Industries to my daughter, Nora Marie Caldwell. The words hung in the air. Uncle Thomas smiled. Aunt Claire started crying. Patricia put her face in her hands. Evan looked like he'd been punched. That's impossible, Evan whispered. The business is mine. I built it. I ran it. You stole from it, Mr. Harrison corrected. Your father was very clear in his reasoning. He wrote, I leave controlling interest to Nora because she has demonstrated loyalty, honesty, and compassion. She has my complete trust. I felt tears streaming down my face again, but this time they weren't from sadness. Dad had believed in me, after everything, despite the distance. He had trusted me. The remaining 49%, Mr. Harrison continued, is divided between Evan and Nora. Contingent on the audit results and the resolution of the criminal complaint. What does that mean? Patricia asked. It means if Evan is found guilty of financial misconduct, he forfeits his portion entirely. Evan finally looked at me, really looked at me. You're going to let them destroy me. No, I said quietly. You destroyed yourself. I'm just not going to lie for you anymore. Mr. Harrison flipped another page. As for the estate properties... Wait, Uncle Thomas interrupted. The house, the land in Vermont, the lake property. All properties are to be divided equally between the children, Mr. Harrison read, unless misconduct is confirmed, in which case... Let me guess, Evan said bitterly. I get nothing. Mr. Harrison nodded. This can't be legal, Evan said, but his voice had no conviction left. There has to be a way to challenge this. Your father anticipated that, Mr. Harrison said. He had 3 independent legal experts review the will. Everything is airtight. He pulled out another document. The house at 4892 Riverside Drive, currently valued at $1.2 million. The Vermont property, 30 acres with a cabin, valued at $400,000. The lake house, valued at $650,000. Under normal circumstances, these would be split evenly. And now, Aunt Claire asked. Now it depends on the audit results, which, Mr. Harrison checked his watch, should be arriving any moment. Your father arranged for an expedited review by a forensic accounting firm. As if on cue, his phone buzzed. He picked it up, read something, and his expression hardened. The preliminary audit results are here. Evan gripped the edge of the table so hard his knuckles turned white. Patricia moved away from him, as if she couldn't bear to be close anymore. Mr. Harrison opened his email and began reading. The room held its breath. The audit reveals undeniable evidence of systematic fund diversion, he read. Over $800,000 transferred to personal accounts, forged authorization documents, falsified expense reports. Aunt Claire gasped. As a result of these findings, Evan Caldwell is disqualified from receiving his portion of the estate under the terms outlined in the will. The room erupted. Evan lunged to his feet, screaming. Patricia burst into tears. Helen grabbed her daughter and pulled her toward the door. "This is all your fault," Evan shouted at me. "You turned him against me, you poisoned him." "I barely spoke to him," I shouted back, finally losing my composure. "Because you made sure of it. Every time I called, every time I tried to visit, you blocked me. Because you didn't deserve to be here. You left, you abandoned us." "I built a life. That's not abandonment." Uncle Thomas stepped between us. "Evan, stop. You did this to yourself." "No," Evan's voice cracked. "I sacrificed everything for this family, for that business. While she was in Oregon living her perfect little life, I was here working 70-hour weeks." "Stealing," Mr. Harrison corrected coldly. "You were stealing." Evan turned on him. "You'll pay for this, all of you. I'll sue. I'll fight this until—" He didn't get to finish. The conference room door opened, and 2 police officers walked in. "Evan Caldwell," one of them asked. Evan's face went ashen. "What?" "We have a warrant for your arrest for fraud and embezzlement." Patricia screamed. Aunt Claire grabbed Uncle Thomas's arm. I sat frozen in my chair. The officer continued. "You have the right to remain silent." I watched as they put handcuffs on my brother. He was still shouting, still insisting this was all a mistake, all my fault, all some elaborate conspiracy against him. Patricia was sobbing. Helen had her arms around her daughter, whispering something I couldn't hear. As the officers led Evan toward the door, he turned back to me one last time. "You'll pay for this, Nora. I swear you'll pay." Then he was gone, and the room fell into shocked silence. Mr. Harrison finally spoke. "There's one more document, a personal letter from your father to Nora." He handed me a sealed envelope, thicker than the first. My hands trembled as I opened it. Dad's handwriting covered 3 full pages. I read silently at first, but Mr. Harrison said gently, "Your father requested you read it aloud if you felt comfortable." I took a shaky breath and began to read. "My dearest Nora, if you're reading this, then you know the truth about your brother. I'm so sorry you had to learn it this way. I'm sorry I didn't protect you from his manipulation sooner." My voice cracked, but I continued. "I want you to know that you were never the problem. You were never not enough. Evan learned to manipulate people from a young age, and I enabled it by making excuses for him. When you left for college, I told myself you were chasing your dreams. Evan told everyone you were running away." I paused, wiping my eyes. Aunt Claire was crying too. "I should have corrected that narrative. I should have defended you more. But I was proud of you for building your own life, and I didn't realize how Evan was weaponizing your absence until it was almost too late." The letter went on to detail how Dad had discovered the theft, how heartbroken he had been, how he'd wrestled with whether to involve the police or handle it privately. "In the end," I read, "I chose to protect you and the legacy I want to leave. Not a legacy of money, though I hope the business thrives under your leadership, but a legacy of integrity, of standing up for what's right even when it's painful." The next part made my voice break completely. "I'm so proud of you, Nora. Proud of the woman you've become. Proud of your strength, your kindness, your independence. Your mother would be proud too." I couldn't continue. Uncle Thomas took the letter gently from my hands and read the final paragraph. Use what I built to create your own legacy. Lead with the compassion that Evan never learned. And please forgive an old man for not seeing the truth sooner. I love you, my dear girl. Always, Dad. The days that followed felt surreal. News of Evan's arrest spread through town like wildfire. The local paper ran a story. The business community buzzed with speculation. Evan's former partners began calling, wanting to distance themselves from him. Friends who had believed his version of events started reaching out to apologize. Patricia filed for divorce within a week. She came to see me at the house, Dad's house, now my house, with red-rimmed eyes. I didn't know, she said, about any of it. The vacation home, the money, the lies. I thought we were struggling. He told me business was bad. I believe you, I said, and I did. The kids keep asking where their dad is. What do I tell them? I had no answer for that. Through Helen, I heard that Evan had tried to make bail but couldn't afford it. The accounts he'd stolen from were frozen. His assets were being seized. He was stuck in county jail, waiting for trial. I didn't visit him. I couldn't. Not yet, maybe not ever. Instead, I focused on the business. I met with the staff, with Dad's former partners, with the accountants trying to untangle the mess Evan had created. They were all shocked that I was taking over. The daughter who lived in Oregon, the one they'd been told wanted nothing to do with the family business. Mr. Harrison called me 3 weeks after the will reading. There's one more thing your father left for you. I've been instructed to take you there personally. He drove me to an office building downtown. We took the elevator to the 3rd floor and stopped in front of a door with a placard that read, J. Caldwell, Private Office. Your father maintained this space, Mr. Harrison explained. No one knew about it except him and me. He used it to investigate Evan without being detected. He unlocked the door. Inside was a small but well-appointed office. A desk, bookshelves, a comfortable chair. But what caught my eye was a framed document on the wall. I stepped closer. It was a legal document dated 3 years ago, long before Dad's cancer diagnosis. It was an amendment to his will, naming me as primary beneficiary of the business. Dad's signature was at the bottom, along with those of 2 witnesses. 3 years ago, I whispered. Mr. Harrison nodded. Your father always intended for you to inherit the company. He delayed announcing it publicly, hoping Evan would mature, would prove himself trustworthy. But Evan never did. I sank into the desk chair, overwhelmed. You were never an afterthought, Nora. You were always the plan. On the desk was one final note in Dad's handwriting. Now go lead. Roman 9 months later, I stood in the boardroom of Caldwell Industries for the first time as majority owner and CEO. The same staff who had watched Evan run things his way now watched me with a mixture of curiosity and hope. I'd spent the past months learning everything about the business, working 18-hour days, meeting with every department, understanding not just the finances, but the people, the culture, the vision Dad had built. Now it was time to present my own vision. Thank you all for being here, I began. I know this transition hasn't been easy. I know many of you are uncertain about the future. I looked around the room at faces I was coming to know. Good people who had worked hard, who had been as much victims of Evan's deception as anyone. My father built this company on 3 principles: integrity, quality, and respect for every person in the organization. Under my leadership, we're going to return to those principles. I outlined my plans: fair wages, transparent accounting, growth through innovation, not shortcuts, investment in our people, not just profits. When I finished, the room was silent for a moment. Then Marcus Chen, our oldest employee, started clapping. Others joined in. Afterward, as people filed out, I stood alone in the boardroom. Through the window, I could see the city where I'd grown up, left, and now returned to lead. Evan's voice echoed in my memory. You're not family enough to have a say. I smiled softly, touching the framed photo of Dad I'd placed on the wall. Funny, I whispered to his image. Turns out I was the only real family member all along. I picked up my briefcase and headed home. There was work to do, a legacy to honor, and a future to build. Not the future Evan had tried to steal, but the one Dad had trusted me to create. For the first time in years, I felt like I was exactly where I belonged.